Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm so grateful that I'm here. I am here. So, welcome back, everyone. If you're new to this channel, welcome. Thank you for being here. A special hello and welcome to my subscribers on Subscribestar. Thank you so much for investing not only in me, but in yourself and your own journey. For $3 a month on Subscribestar, you can support the continued creation of this content, these reports, these transmissions, and my ability to keep doing it. So, how's everyone feeling? Right before I came live, there was just this wet blanket wave of something that just came over me that was like, you should power down now. And I'm like, I can't power down right now. I'm about to go live. So I'm here. I feel exhausted very suddenly. There's certainly cyclical reasons for this as well, but it got very intense very quickly. So we'll see how far we get through this process. We're going to talk about the astrology for the week, right? We're looking at our fourth lunar quarter. We have an Aquarius new moon on February 1st, and today is our third quarter moon in Scorpio. It's going to square the Aquarius sun, and these are always crisis points along our journey every month, right? The first and third quarter moon always square the sun from different positions, and so one is more of a crisis in action after that new moon seed point intention. And then after the culmination of the full moon, where we get full illumination and in reflection back to us emotionally, what the sun is allowing for in terms of illumination, right? Our emotional and feeling based landscape isn't always very obvious or very visual to us, and it's the full moon in that journey that we all go through of personal growth and evolution that we get to have a much more powerful. And this last full moon was in Cancer, so it was in a powerful sign. It was in Pleiadian starseed markings. It was pretty significant. So we'll go back into the beginning of this lunar cycle just to kind of remind ourselves where we came from in terms of this lunation and this lunar cycle. We want to look at where we've come from so that we understand the larger context of what these things like a first quarter square, third quarter square, the full moon, what it all means in the larger context. So we'll look at that, look up into the new moon on the 1st. There will be astrology forecasts per sign that are coming out in preparation for the new moon. So keep an eye out for that, both on YouTube and BitChute as well. So and everything you need in terms of contact about readings, asking questions. If you're looking for mentorship in your journey as an astrologer, that's something that I started offering as well. I haven't really put it up on the website yet, but that's something that is being beta tested and is actually going well so far. So that's an option as well. If you're interested in that, we called it supervision when I was working in social work or really any kind of human services, right? Where you just kind of check in with somebody who has been doing what you're aspiring to do and workshop some things, get some questions answered, stuff like that. So we'll go through the astrology, like I said, of the week. Man, I'm trying to really keep myself here right now to do this, and I can just feel everything powering down so strongly. So this might end up being a shortened version. We'll see how it goes, because there are some things that I want to share that I think are really important, and specifically, there's two things that I want to talk about, and this actually kind of fits into maybe if people are kind of feeling like an energetic, like, tamping down in some ways. I'm just curious, and look at the chat here. I got whacked with emotion last night and had to do deep inner child work to sleep, and dealing with a roommate getting a booster soon and my own recovery. Oh gosh, feeling the overwhelm. Yeah, I think that's definitely what it is. There is an overwhelm. Energetically and being manifested and expressed in everybody's life in different ways. That's a lot to deal with and to face, Barbara. our cycles are synced up. Yeah, they truly are. And boy, I just want to just go to sleep. And then the overwhelm just in general, right? The thing about the moon in Scorpio is that you are just sinking down into a depth of feeling, and there is a lot of density. And actually this is something that I wanted to talk about in general. So in terms of pressure, density, the Sabian symbol of the new moon in Aquarius, yeah, we'll get to that. That's going to be really kind of the bulk of what we're going to talk about. Of course, we'll look at the third quarter moon in Scorpio today and all the astrology. Now, there is going to be some measure of emotional stability. There's this incredible grand water trine with the moon, Neptune in Pisces, and Black Moon Lilith in Cancer. So not only is it water, it's all like the most feminine of the feminine in terms of Black Moon Lilith and the moon, right? You got some serious divine feminine priestess energy, intuitive, in the space, in the void, receiving from the stillness, and it's all feeling based. So there's going with this grand water trine, and then to have Neptune involved, which is in Pisces, which it's just, everything is everything else. Everything is everything else. So what are you going to do other than try to swim? Right? There's this song that, it's some sort of EDM song, and one of the lyrics has been sticking out, and it's something, what is it? Something like, shallow minds get lost at sea. Well, we're all at sea right now. Neptune and Pisces is making sure that we're all at sea all the time, right? And we have to learn to swim. We have to learn to swim. And this has been the last how many years with Neptune and Pisces. And now it's just getting more so because it's in those, the last decan of Pisces. So it's really reaching, a climax in terms of what it all builds up to in each of the signs, and is a very powerful force, Neptune and Pisces. You're talking about Poseidon in the realm of the ocean. Like there's no match for that. And everything, water is one of the most powerful solvents, right? It's not the only one, but it's one of the most powerful solvents. And so with Neptune involved too, it's the emotional stability that's going to come from this grand water trine as we're going to look at it, which is tomorrow, right? Tomorrow, as the moon is finishing its transit through Scorpio, it's going to give us something to actually, some sort of lifeboat or a ship or a raft or a vessel in any way that will allow us to be protected, emotionally, have some sense of containment emotionally and protection emotionally, vulnerability that we allow ourselves to be vulnerable because there is some sort of system that does contain us, family of origin, our current family, our current home, our spiritual community, our tribe, our clan, our nation, whatever it is, right? Whatever those heritages, those traditions that give you a sense of emotional security. It's, Lilith there, it's an urge that we can't deny. And so with the moon in Scorpio, in some ways, this allows that part of each of us that now has the ability to adapt or feel into anything that's going on. We can sink very deeply into this place. And then there is nothing but the place of the water, of the feeling, of the woo, of the morphogenetic field. However you look at Pisces in the 12th house, right? Source. There's nothing but source, but we do live in this material world, and we do function as source within a container. And so there's something very deep about Lilith that is drawing us to the original blueprint of the planet and how it's inseparable from us. And this is something that will hold us as everything else starts to really fall apart. So this is the first thing that I wanted to bring up. This was an incredible conversation right before I came live, actually. A question that was being asked. Somebody is having their clients in their work situation start coming to them with some really existential questions, and people are going to start coming here very rapidly, very quickly. And as their institutions, their Capricornian institutions, continue to fade and fail and be destroyed, and as the illusion continues to be unveiled in all different ways, people are going to start, rabidly almost, and frantically and almost desperately looking and searching for their magic bullet as the carpet gets pulled out from under them. And if you are in some type of profession already where you're working with people at this level, or not, even if you are just a grid keeper, even if you are bringing that nature of starseed light worker into your everyday life, into a set of routines or your works or your job or profession that isn't related to a specific technical skill that has to do with healing or mysticism or anything like that, like what I do, for instance, or any number of people, we are going to find over the next couple of months that this is going to be a progression, and people are going to be desperate, and they're going to be looking, and they're going to be looking for the magic bullet. So one of the things that came up in this conversation of how to navigate this and how to, what's the best way to, where to send people, what to say to them, what kind of space to hold for them, what can you suggest, right? And one of the things that came up is this person said that their client is going to see a psychic to see if their spouse is cheating on them, right? And so one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, because we're in the Scorpio time with the moon, is that all actions are going to have their consequences. And for me personally, I would not do that type of psychic. That's not the type of psychic work that I would do. If somebody came to me and wanted me to essentially spy on them psychically, or somebody else, to find out what's going on, instead of just, addressing the situation in real time like an adult, that is fully functional in emotional, mental, spiritual capacity, that would address this issue. And you can't guarantee that the other person's going to be honest, but you can make informed decisions based on that interaction. But I personally am not going to do that, because that has karma, right? To do energetic work and to intuitively read people without their consent is something that I'm not okay with. And consent is a big part of the Scorpio archetype, because it's in that realm that consent, if it's not given freely, if it's not given if it's not informed, right, then this is where the shadow comes into play. And so people are towards the mystics. They're going to be looking towards the readers, the energy workers. Well, they're certainly going to keep looking for all their religious leaders, right? And with Jupiter and Pisces right now, that definitely can be, is certainly, it certainly is an opportunity for somebody else to capitalize on that type of position, to stand in the position of some sort of leader or guru in terms of the inner vision and offering some sort of direction or leadership. Absolutely, with Jupiter in Pisces. So just know what it means. There's karma attached to those actions. And that's not for me to judge. That's just my assessment of that type of work. And Scorpio is where it happens. And so we have to be very mindful about a moon in Scorpio right now, especially squaring probably the weakest point of the sun, which is in Aquarius, right? I mean, the sun in Aquarius right now is so easy to just get pulled into the cult mindset, or get pulled into the collective as an entity, and just kind of like turn off your own voice in some ways, and just get into gooble gobble one of us, right? And the other aspect of that, though, is as far as I, is that rituals are binding. And the ritual is powered by Scorpio realm, right? It's the drive, it's the urge, it's the energy that pushes us to merge with each other. It is what drives us to produce something with in conjunction with other, right? In a relationship, it is what drives us to eventually alchemize a situation, right? To transmute. There is an urge that is at the bottom of the space in which we find whatever it is we produce. There's a power dynamic that is created in whatever kind of relationship it is. And so it will tear us away from what is familiar. It will lead us to ambition in order to gain more. And that's not in itself good or bad. It has a lot to do with the intent and the informed consent of everybody involved. And if there isn't informed consent of everybody involved, then that ritual is still absolutely binding. But you cannot account for the karma that is going to unfold as a result of that. There is karma to do an intuitive read on somebody without their consent, even if they're doing something that is also not not honest or not ethical, or is just, not telling the truth, for instance. It's not like it cancels it out, but you still have to play that role forward at some point, right? And so whether or not you choose to do that consciously or not, or unconsciously, you're still doing it. We're all still doing it. So this third quarter moon, in terms of our consciousness and where it's residing, everything about Scorpio is personal. Everything about it is personal, and everything about Aquarius is so the opposite of personal. It is completely impersonal, because you have to have it. It's the container that holds the feeling, not the feeling itself, which is Scorpio. And so we can't get these things confused. And we also have to be very aware of the reality that these rituals are binding, right? And we will be driven to execute them or perform them as a result of our human nature in a lot of ways, to produce in order to create something new, in order to, merge with other deeper, in order to investigate, to get to the bottom of something, right? All of these are just drives that come about as a result of our knowledge of what it means to be in a relationship and who we are in a relationship. And just in this moment, yes, we are having a hard time. I think that we have to be very real with ourselves about what that karma is, and to know too that, like, we may feel an urge to maybe take it in a new direction. There's nothing wrong with that. But with the Sun in Aquarius, it is really, and Mercury and Saturn, right? We're about to get to a point where even if we feel a certain way about something and we are feeling driven towards a particular production, a particular and to distribute, right? We want to commune, we want to cooperate, and we understand, and we do feel into how powerful that is, to the point where it'll pull us apart or pull us away from something. We are still living out right now, and with Saturn especially, we are still experiencing at a fundamentally socio-political level, at a formalized level, the outcome of the binding ritual, which is Aquarius, right? It is literally the container or the social setting that holds the water that we experience in Cancer, that we experience in Scorpio, and ultimately that we go back to when we move from Aquarius to Pisces. So this is not to be in judgment of anybody's work either. I'm just telling you where I'm at and what my opinion is, and to be aware that people's desire, and to get to the bottom of something, and to, when you wake up, you wake up in that eighth house usually as the result of a dark night of the soul. And many people are about to like fast track that shit because of a lot of decisions that a lot of people have made and how we've gotten to this point. But as we move out of this, we started this particular lunar cycle, setting intentions and seed points that allowed us to grow from a place of revering and honoring and acknowledging the process of death and rebirth, right? Whatever that is, at whatever house you find that in for yourself, whatever that means to you, it's the idea that the symbol of fire represents the ability to transcend the experience of this or that because it's happening simultaneously. And in some ways, it allows you your own consciousness to transcend the physical cycles that play out, because fire again represents that in its entirety. In one elemental process represents the destruction and the rebirth over and over again. And this is what transmutation is. This is where we get the energy of Sagittarius, which the moon will be moving into during this week. So the strength of that type of meaning that we get from the whatever is driving us in Scorpio is something we'll be able to take with us. But we still have to live in a reality that's already been created as a result of ritual binding. And people are going to be looking for easy ways out, and it's really up to us, I would say, with this new moon that's coming on the 1st of February, the new moon in Aquarius, to be a barometer, right? To initiate the activation of our own internalized equipment, right? That we ourselves, with the bringing together of our how we feel and how we express ourselves into some type of equipment, a barometer. I mean, I don't know what else I can say. That's the Sabian symbol for the new moon in Aquarius. And it's going to be conjunct Saturn, which is about to move from... It's in the second half of Aquarius at the time of the new moon, 15 to 16 degrees. The new moon's at 13 degrees Aquarius. It is a big businessman at his desk. Like, there's just no getting around what it is that we are, the entire social setting as a whole and the energy that it holds. And I'm not suggesting that we can't do anything about ourselves, and that's really what the moon represents, and Chiron represents, and Uranus and the North Node. They're all at the bottom of the chart. The moon is how we feel about things as we progress through the zodiac, but we talked about that yesterday. Everything seemed, there's very little that is bringing our attention back to us as individual beings. So you may find that stuff is actually at the bottom of your chart. And that's something that we'll be covering in the astrology forecast for all the signs, where all of these transits are going to be happening. So one of the things is going through, you can't interfere with their karmic lessons, right? Exactly. And going through that, not interfering with someone's friend who desperately needs money lent for an overdue house payment, and the balance of Aquarius and Leo, big time. Absolutely. And I love wet blanket transmissions. It doesn't get any better. The real, raw, tell it like it is. Some of my best work has come where I've been totally exhausted and my conscious mind has to shut down, and then it's the subconscious where a lot of the real is where you're able to really channel. That's where I'm channeling from, is my higher self. I'm not channeling any other being necessarily, just my higher self. And when your conscious mind turns off, it's just like, it just can come out in that real and very raw aspect. So I appreciate that you see that. I wasn't going to say anything because I know that that's how it is, but I can also be very rambly too, and that's something that I'm trying to not necessarily do. So one of the things I wanted to show you, and then we'll get into the chart actually for this time, is Here, I want to show this to you because, like I said, the barometer is the new moon, Sabian symbol. And a barometer does what? It measures pressure, and you can make forecasts of change in weather based on the changes in the pressure, the barometric pressure of the atmosphere, right? And so what is it that actually creates pressure? Now, we've seen this before, and anybody that's taken a basic chemistry class is going to be able to answer this, but let's just remind ourselves so that we can weave this into the some verbiage that gets thrown around and used a lot in more of the metaphysical, esoteric, and new age circles, which is density, right? So I want to show you this because when we start talking about barometer, right, what we are doing is measuring the density. And in the case of Aquarius, what it's in particular referencing is that we ourselves, especially as a new moon, right, this is a personal activation of the yin and yang, part of ourselves that allows us to create and grow at every turn, right? It's a constant process of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? The sun and the moon within us allows us to access these two parts of ourselves. So the barometer, like I said, is measuring a change in pressure. And so when there's a change in pressure, the weather changes. Now, from a social standpoint, from a societal standpoint, from a maybe a global society, maybe a futuristic society, all these Aquarian things are really about this is the social setting as its own organism and the power that it holds, right? This is the water that is held in the jug that the Aquarius constellation, the water bearer, it's a person, it's an individual. There's actually Greek mythology to reference Aquarius as an actual figure that maybe we'll go into at a different time. But this is pressure. Change in the social pressure, you can make a reasonable assumption of a natural cause and effect. Okay, we want to, as individual spiritual beings, we want to be able to find that place within us, or to be in some ways our own spiritual equipment to measure changes in pressure in the social setting. And I think this is going to be beyond valuable as we go through February, because by the time we get into March, April, and especially May, as we wrap up eclipse season and begin a new Pleiadian eclipse season with the sun at Algol, right? Oh my gosh. We're going to want to be able to not rely on what is being told to us, but to be our own barometer for the change in the social organism as a whole, so that we can predict and forecast for ourselves. And with it being so close to Saturn, there is just a sense of authority in terms of the social setting in general that we're not getting around, right? And Saturn is co-ruler of Aquarius, so Saturn has been very powerful here just as much as it was very powerful in Capricorn. And Saturn's gone from the contribution phase of Aquarius to now the management phase. This is really Jupiter's territory in terms of management. The boss isn't always a great manager, and anybody who's ever worked in a place where the manager and the owner are different people, that's the case, right? But with the case of Saturn as an archetypal reference to the sands of time, to the scaffolding of the matrix, to the backbone of reality here, this is truly about management of the social setting as a whole. So we want to be able to, over the course of February and that whole lunar cycle, to allow for the growth. And the full moon in February, I know I'm getting ahead of myself, and I've talked about this in the Pleiadian revival, so it's a great thing to put a pin in, because this is a big one, right? These also Pleiadian, but at a square angle of the full moon in February as well. We're going to want to be able to feel within ourselves when things change, right? We don't want to rely on what is being told to us, right? Mercury is still retrograde right now and is actually at the degree, as we're going to see, is back at 0 degrees Aquarius, which is where it was at the new moon, right? The new moon in Capricorn. So we're returning back to a very singular concept of the ideal human civilization. And now that Mercury's in retrograde, we're like, oh, what do I think about that? What does that bring up for me in my nervous system? And how do I wrap my mind around it? Anyway, so let's go back to density and pressure here, just to give you an idea. So this is the when we look at the magnetosphere. So the more blue it is, the more dense, right? And so what happens when you have more density? Well, first of all, what's density? Density is parts per volume, right? And so you have here the magnetosphere, and the more blue it is, the more dense, which is why we seem to be able to buffer a lot of the solar weather that just came in, coronal hole stream and some like blips of solar flare, but not a lot of excitement necessarily of the magnetosphere. Well, it's dense, right? There's more parts per cubic centimeter in the magnetosphere. And what does that create? It creates pressure, right? Because pressure is, again, it's mass per volume. And the more mass per volume, certainly the more dense. And it has it has that relationship where it creates more pressure as well. So when the pressure changes, then everything else changes in terms of the density, right? And so we want to be able to measure that. We want to be able to feel that. We want to come to some sort of growth in our own personhood over the course of this next lunar cycle that will allow us to be able to be our own barometer for the changes in the density and the pressure of the social organism, because that's going to be our best tool that we can have, because as all of the ways that the illusion is falling away, and there's still tons of attempts at controlling it as it's all crumbling. I mean, there will still be attempts to capitalize on things, to steer things, right? But if we are not relying on anybody else's necessarily their rendition of things, and we are fine-tuning our own instrumentation within ourselves, then we will be able to feel these shifts and changes. And when we do that, we can make decisions that are more informed. Again, informed consent, right? Informed consent. This is why we're in such a fucking mess. Sorry. I mean, but it is, because there are millions and millions and millions and possibly billions of people that have been in a binding ritual on all levels without even realizing it, but it's still binding and there is still karma. But we can enact new rituals. We can enact new binding relationships. And that's something that I think is going to be, well, more relevant, possibly in May, when we have the flip of the Pleiadian eclipse season, and we start a new eclipse season, and it's going to be with the eclipsed full moon is going to be at 26 to 27 degrees Scorpio, right? It's going to be opposite of basically what the full moon eclipse was at the beginning of this cycle, which was in November. So I'm really getting drawn out until to start looking past May into the summer and to next fall. And I know I'm sure other astrologers have done their full 2022 check-in and stuff like that. So I want to do that, but it's going to be over the next couple of months where we really want to have our instrumentation be calibrated. And the new moon in February is exactly like the time that we set the intention for that. So let's look at the charts actually for this week. So raw suits the situation. I totally would agree with that too. All right. So the first thing I want to show everybody as we embark on this journey here, and I am getting a little bit more of a lift here. That also usually happens, but so you can see some pretty significant blue lines here on this chart. And blue line is a trine, a sextile. It is something that is harmonious and balanced, or certainly harmonious. A trine is very balanced. A sextile is also very balanced, but is activating in some way. It is the actual process of the alchemy within ourselves, or the action of it in terms of, the sextile is the 3 and the 3, the triangle and the triangle, right? So this has already happened. Our third quarter moon has already happened, squaring the sun. It squared Mercury early this morning at 0 degrees while it was in a sextile to Mars. Mars is now, in Capricorn. So there's also, remember we talked about that yod and that finger of God, right? I think there's a lot of ambition, and there's a strong feeling to go into something, or to investigate something, get to the bottom of something, produce something. All of these Scorpio and scorpionic themes that is really, the what drives humans to do anything, and to commune, to cooperate, to come together and produce something. And with Mars being also a ruler of Scorpio coming into Capricorn, where it's about power and leadership and socio-political status, and the cohesiveness of what we create together out of meaning, right? The unfolding of the materium, and a sense of ambition and goals that come along with Capricorn, because you see what needs to be done, and it's a concerted, organized effort to do so. And nature follows the same type of pattern, right? In order for the natural world to unfold, there is a process in which it follows. And it's just like your body, right? Think about all the cells that work together to create tissues, then the tissues create organs, and organs create systems, and then you have this whole organism here. Same thing with Capricorn, all these moving parts, all the cogs to the wheel. And Mars is just like, yeah, let's get it. And the moon in Scorpio is just like, oh, I'm feeling it. I'm ready to widen my experience with others and go into, on this tour bus to hell. Remember, though, that finger of God, that yod, that is pointing to the North Node in conjunction with the last degree of Taurus, right? At the Pleiades, at the degree of the peacock, strutting around, right? Full consummation, full inheritance of a lineage that is represented in this very material way. It's very Venusian, because the peacock does represent Venus, and Venus is the ruler of Taurus. So, but this is very much about the physical world in and of itself, right? It's about what is, right? What is, and what has culminated and consummated. And again, there is a sense here that I can't get past with all of the astrology. And I know that this is going to seem, at first, I can feel how difficult it is for people to hear this message. But what it really suggesting here is that, at least for me, is that we have to live through the unfolding of the process that has already been put into place. You can't just stop the chemical reaction when it's in full swing, unless you have something, I guess, once the bomb goes off, right, the chemical reaction is then happening, right? There's no stopping the chain reaction. And there's something very powerful about this, that it's about being managed at this point, and being in communion with that, rather than trying to do anything. And I think that depending on what aspect of Capricorn we are choosing to be in alignment with is going to have a real impact on where we put our energy. So And this, again, this is where this third quarter moon squaring the sun, right? A crisis in our consciousness, of having that ambition and that avidity and like that just urge and drive to get somewhere. Whereas with the sun in Aquarius, it's like we all have our role to play. And we all have a transpersonal responsibility to put the mask on in the ritual, right? It's not even about us at this point, especially with the sun in Aquarius. Not even about us. We're playing a role. And when you start to look at your mission in terms of a starseed mission, for instance, or even just multiple lifetimes as a light worker, multidimensional experience, right? All of that stuff, you start to acknowledge in some ways that is, that there is a symphony to all of this that perhaps that is already in motion. And that's not to say that we don't have impact. And I think the best way to make use of where that sextile was yesterday is to be very real with ourselves, and to activate this very strong urge and drive and feeling towards maybe widening our own experience within our own journey. Perhaps putting that Mars energy behind, a claim for leadership and authority in terms of being in charge of or out front in one's own sense of security and a sense of goals, right? Or what you want to work towards. Maybe we have to let these cycles play out in order to, again, know what to do next. And this is kind of the, this is kind of why, like, there's not a, chaos theory. Like every time that there is a variable change in the system, the whole system can change, right? These are fixed points in time with these cycles, but how we get there is always the result of what we are doing in any given moment. And so this is why understanding astrology is so important, I think, because it gives us insight onto what these fixed points in time represent and how we can be in harmony with it rather than in dissonance, right? Or trying to control for anything. So, but this was yesterday. And then we have the square with the moon. We have Mercury back at 0 degrees Aquarius. Now, the other thing that's happening that's pretty substantial today is the moon is in a trine with Jupiter in Pisces. So while there may be this tension and a serious confrontation between this incredible drive to to acquire more value in our relationships, whatever they are, as opposed to we find our voice by just playing our role within the social context. While there's a confrontation here that needs to be addressed for all of us, the baseline here, or especially an emotional baseline at the very same time, is with Jupiter in Pisces. And there will be a sense of emotional sustainment, I think, from the community if you are expanding in a spiritual way, right? That's the thing about Aquarius, is not any less spiritualized, but this is intellect and mental gnosis, and a sense of containment of that which is the woo, the energy of the collective. And so Jupiter being here, expanding on what is already an infinite space and finding a sense of representation and advocacy, and even, a kind of a teacher in some ways. Jupiter, it's really about being a leader, and Jupiter is a great manager. I think that the emotional stability, right, is coming into, expanding your sense of what it is that you want to be part of, right? And are you willing to 100%? Are you 100% give yourself to the the spiritual aspect of what you're doing, or the transcendental aspect, or 100% to the karmic clearing up, right, with Pisces, or the 100%, are you willing to give yourself? Because if you are, there's a sense, and really expanding on this true inner vision, that is, again, spiritual, is going back to source, then this is where the emotional stability at least starts here with this trine to Jupiter in Pisces, right? There is something that we can connect to intuitively, emotionally, maybe in the dream state as well, depending on when you're sleeping, if you're still sleeping, right? I mean, this is 8:40 a.m., so some people on the West Coast are still sleeping at this time. So it might come out during that time too, that there is an emotional sustainment here if we step into a position of really, not only trusting ourselves, but managing ourselves within a much more compassionate, much more devoted, emotionally devoted, right? And knowing that it will be sustained. So this Sabian symbol here is very interesting. It's like a bunch of officers, like army military officers in their dress uniform, like in a parade, if you've ever seen that. And everybody, like a Memorial Day parade. I don't know if you've ever, they used to be like a big deal in the town that I grew up in, because I grew up in a town that's got like huge Revolutionary War, like Washington's Crossing is like right there. So Memorial Day parade, they would all come out, everybody, all the service members, the firefighters in the local town, everybody come out and have a parade, and everybody's like, yay, thank you for your service, remember the fallen, remember the vets, and all of the service people. And so it's the relationship is emotional in terms of this particular image, right? That you give of yourself, and in return there is some type of presentation or some sort of community give back in an emotional sustainment type of way through this symbolism. So it has to be. But it must be in a sense where you give of yourself, right, completely to the process. So this maybe expands our vision a little bit here in terms of what we are feeling driven to gather or to acquire or to accumulate, right? Like we may be feeling pulled away in order to gather more. So this really expands this a lot so that we don't get trapped in a very limited sense of what we are giving our energy to. And when it's the moon, I mean, we really are feeling into it very personally. So I think it's expanding and giving us something more than just our own individual drives to connect that feeling to. That's a very, like I said, this is happening pretty much at the same time, or did this morning. So this is where, you can see Lilith is already coming into a trine with Neptune. Let me see if I want to see if there's anything else in particular today to cover with this. And Mercury moves back into Capricorn today, and that means by tomorrow Mercury is also going to let's see here, Mercury is also going to eventually meet with Pluto, but that's going to be a couple days. So let's go forward a day here so we can see the Lilith and the water trine here. There it is. Let's go one more hour. There, look at that. Look at that. There's this grand water trine with the moon in Scorpio. So the moon in Scorpio, Lilith in Cancer, and then Neptune in Pisces. So they're all in very powerful places. They're all in water signs. They're all rulers of water signs. Well, not the moon. The moon... the moon rules Cancer. Lilith doesn't have like a ruling territory, but the fact that she's in Cancer is just plenty. And then Neptune in Pisces. So this is happening tomorrow. The moon is going to, keep squaring. It's going to have a square to Saturn. And so again, I feel like that as we go through the week, all of us are going to be feeling into like, wanting to kind of get to the bottom of something or feel into the intensity of what we are producing and what we are cooperating in order to produce, right? And it's drive, especially with the moon. It's just drive. It's the urge to merge and to feel. You want to feel down to the depths of everything. And then coming into Sagittarius, we'll gather a lot of strength from that position. And I do feel like this water trine tomorrow is going to be a very stable, emotionally stable moment here, and very powerful. Oh my, very, very, very powerful. A kind of a release, a release of energies that is grounded in. I think I talked about this already. I distinctly remember now, like going through what this water trine would be, right? That we have some type of, getting connected to something even deeper than our own subconscious, some sort of primal blueprint that drives us to survive is like a lifeboat here. And the mandate is coming down from the mountain. And it's certainly if Jupiter was in the same position, which it will be in just a matter of months, it would be much more of a Moses type of like vibe going on. But with Neptune, it's not as clear cut in terms of like bringing the law down from the mountain, and just take that loosely. I'm not advocating for any specific set of commandments. It's more of a symbolic representation of taking a piece. Okay. Are we still here? My streaming software cut out, and I just want to make sure that it didn't like screw up the stream. So a release, right? A release of energy, or at the very least, like a willingness and an ability to plunge ahead into the unknown, because there is something so much deeper than even that is providing a sense of emotional protection, emotional containment, allows us to be vulnerable and to feel as we are essentially swimming in this ocean of experience, of spiritual experience. And like I said, it'd be one thing if Jupiter was here, and Jupiter will be at this degree in just a matter of months. But with Neptune here, there's no leader, there's no obvious like management of this. It's just a feeling, and it's just a feeling along with every other feeling. And so the propaganda and the fog machine is always so strong with Neptune and Pisces, like this direct. And so there's something here in this water trine that is really going to assist those that are very much able to find that place that's even deeper than themselves, their connection to the ancestry of the planet, their connection to their original blueprint of being a human, right? Their connection to something that is instinctual almost, will be kind of will be the vessel that holds all of us and protects us emotionally, as we are in some ways attempting to release, be some sort of emotional release, or at the very least being able to, plunge ahead into the unknown. And this is the unknown, right? Neptune in Pisces is so much the unknown, unless you are able to swim with the sharks, right? Shallow minds get lost at sea. And this has been the case for a while, and it's just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And if we want to be able to clearly or at least clearly feel what that peak experience really means, I feel like we're going to have some sort of like emotional release somewhere, right? Or come to a moment where we're like, I'm going to go truly now investigate. Like I'm letting go of even the preconceived conditions of this situation, or what I've already gathered already, and now it's time to find a way to release that energy. This is part of, rituals or binding, and this is certainly part of the moment where the release of the energy built up in that situation is kind of like the last decan. Now remember, the last decan of Scorpio is the Seven of Cups, and so again, we need something that will allow us to not get lost in all of the debauchery or all of the all of the options, right? And get weighed down by them. This is going to be so strong, but it also is a very emotionally stabilizing force. And I think Lilith is a big part of it. Because without that, and it would just be this trine between the moon and Neptune, I have a feeling that it wouldn't nearly be as stabilized, as obviously as this. This is like the point here of our boat in the water is our original blueprint, basically. That part of ourselves that demands to be heard, that part of ourselves that demands to be acknowledged, and is loyal to that part of ourselves as opposed to anything and anyone else. So, wow, that is pretty incredible in terms of astrology. So what do we, the week? I mean, like I said, the moon moves into Sagittarius. We're going to have a sextile. Let's move ahead. What's this here? We're going to move ahead to the 28th. Can we see this? Yes, we can. Here's the 28th, guys. So the moon is going to, you feel pretty strong with a moon in Sag, right? The meaning is like something that that we're all directly like feeling into, right? The meaning of things, the big picture, like the fire, the hot fire, the coal fire that is so hot that it can actually change, temper things and change them into something new. And this is a moon in Sagittarius really brings us a lot of inner strength. And that's going to feel, I think, pretty good. There will be, surely, like I said, squares, lots of challenges. Square to Neptune. Pallas Athena's in this territory too, so there'll be squares to Jupiter. A moon in Sag square to Jupiter. That's going to be very interesting indeed, that we'll talk more about as we get there. But the one thing I wanted to bring up here is that the sun is going to be in a sextile to Chiron. 10 degrees Aquarius and 10 degrees of Aries, and this is a great opportunity here to be real again. Realizing the difference between a screen, projecting onto people as if they're some sort of screen, and seeing people for who, and yourself, right? Ourselves for who we really are, and expressing that as well. Like either finding our authentic voice by expressing in some way that we are in fact a flawed human being, or we are just human, or we express ourselves by acknowledging that people are just people and not what has been projected out onto them. And the sextile with Chiron is going to be an incredible moment here, where we really do get to heal some serious inner wounding and shame and guilt about who we are, by giving that aspect of ourselves that maybe maybe we thought we were the embodiment of an ideal, or perhaps we thought somebody else was the embodiment of an ideal. We come to realize with the sun here that it's really just people, and they're not the ideal. That's been me projecting onto it. And I think that this is a great opportunity with this sextile to Chiron to realize the bigger symbolic meaning of that, right? And to really let go of the wounding that would normally accompany that type of you know, the sun in Aquarius, I mean, you're talking about your own ego with the sun and the expression of one's ego through the sun. And so to meet this point, it can be very deflating. And the sun is already weak in Aquarius. So this point is just kind of like, especially when you have to contend with the fact that maybe you're not, or somebody else is not who you thought they were. But again, there is a magic moment here with Chiron to really allow that to, be a healing agent, right? To let go of what otherwise would be a feeling of shame or guilt, or a trigger in some way of who we thought we were, or who we thought other people were, or how that affects us, right? Victim savior narrative fits into this as well. This is an incredible opportunity. So this is on the 28th of the sextile with the sun and Chiron in Aries. So this is when Mercury and Pluto come together. So at the same time this is happening, Mercury in its retrograde meets Pluto again. This is the second of a three-time connection because of where, the retrograde period for Mercury. And so again, there's this, Mercury is able to, shadow in some ways Pluto. Mercury is able to shepherd souls into the underworld. Mercury is able to go in and out of a space that is not meant to be traveled back and forth, right? That goes against the laws of our natural world, especially. And Pluto has the final word about those things, whether, in a very strictly material sense. And it's more about the cycle, not so much death is like any kind of end. But this is, because we have to surrender ourselves to that. That's why I think it's so difficult to not be afraid of something that we truly just don't know. Anyway, Mercury is able to take us into these spaces with that emotional aspect kind of detached. Now in Capricorn, especially 26 to 27 degrees Capricorn, I mean, we are addressing, we're proofreading in some ways, or, really very deeply and very seriously considering, again, the pathway up the mountain and how it's been created as a result of many, many pilgrimages and many pilgrims traveling the same pathway, many teachers and guides and sages leading people up the mountain. And it's something that's created collectively, but is also meant for an individualized experience. And Mercury specifically can really function in this way. But it does appear, again, that we are taking a journey into a space, taking a mental journey within a space of transformation and metamorphosis when it comes to the pathways that have been laid out for us. With Pluto here, so close to the natal Pluto of the United States as well. I mean, within a degree, we really are taking a look, an inner look, right? Maybe a detached look, maybe looking within ourselves, what we think about the pathway up the mountain and how it's being destroyed, and we have to find our own way. And perhaps Mercury is this opportunity to reconsider within ourselves what that way is going to be. And maybe we need to just give some more consideration to what our strategy is going to be, or how we feel, or just what we think about this whole situation. And being able to really find ourselves as authentic humans, as opposed to some sort of ideal or an embodiment of an ideal, and shedding that in a way that really helps, like with this Chiron wounding in terms of shame and guilt about ourselves. I think that in that activation, this connection with Pluto, these are very powerful, raw, transformational energies when it comes to the socio-political order that are being brought right to our own cognitive awareness. And so it's not to be underestimated to have these two things together. You know, there may be some very intense conversations, but with Mercury retrograde, it's really conversations that may have already happened, and perhaps we are going to go back over them ourselves, or perhaps that is just a reflection, a deeper reflection about this whole process. Now that we in the wake of this sextile with Chiron, this is at the end of the week. This is Friday, so. As we go through this time, we also see that Venus now stations direct as well during this week. So at 11 to 12 degrees Capricorn, she's so close to like an exact trine to Uranus, and I'd say it's close enough where Venus is now direct and in a trine to Uranus and Taurus, and so we know that, you know, the shifting landscape in terms of assets and currencies, like literal currencies and the types of currencies, whether they be physical dollars, the fiat currency of the Federal Reserve, whether it be Bitcoin, all of that stuff now is, activated and moving around and shifting and really bringing our attention towards the cultivation of our own assets and resources. And the fact that it's not stable, the fact that it is shifting and radically reorienting itself with, blipping in and out with Uranus is, in fact, actually setting us up to transform how we what kind of relationship we have with our with resources in general. So, and Venus in Capricorn now moving direct, man, she has learned so much, and we have learned so much with her grace and her grace and wisdom and patience and a sense of just deep ancient like wisdom and rootedness, right? Like grandmother energy so much. And now like going into a very deep internalized experience, and now is coming back into bloom in some ways. And so there's value, I would say, in really being able to understand an economy in general. And we're talking about Venus, she rules Taurus. So Capricorn in itself is like the economy in itself. Taurus is the actual resources that make up that economy. So now we've had some time to maybe assess internally the value and the meaning of the economy in general, for instance. And now we are actively becoming sensitive to and engaging relationships and resources and other things, and engaging the economy, right? Engaging some sort of sense of harmony and balance in the economy by really investigating the underlying mechanisms. And this is really very strongly related to a video that I just watched. It was an interview with Cliff High, and I'll post it because it's not on his BitChute channel. It's on someone else's, an interview he did. And one of the things he's been talking about is all of this economy stuff. And he's on the same tip, right? About how, it's going to be, the economy issue is going to come to a head as, of course, as the nodes are in Taurus and Scorpio, as I've also forecasted. One of the things that he talked about is like, you just have to be educated about what all of this means. And if you're educated, then you will be able to manage yourself as this landscape is in fact changing Uranus in Taurus. But it's something, the sensitivity and a sense of maturity to real true value in an economy is now what Venus is going to have us addressing. And in a way that is about being sensitive to the very value and nature of the economy, and a willingness in some ways to go into a space that is investigative, and a willingness to really understand the underlying mechanisms of the economy through value, not through the mind necessarily. That would be much more of a mercurial thing. And Mercury is in Capricorn with Pluto, but Venus is now direct. And so we have really calibrated that instrument in some ways, which is very natural to value and meaning in terms of the economy, in terms of the political structure, in terms of the governments in general, and in terms of the actual materium that we live under. So Now, this trine, this is like as long as people are recognizing the value and have the, the sensitivity to the underlying workings of the economy, it's very much going to stabilize what otherwise is a consistently unstable environment, which is the shifting landscape of the actual currency, actual resources, actual physical things. So this is important, especially now that she's stationed direct at the end of this week. So, and in the meantime, the moon is at the galactic center, and we're going to find that it's going to move into Capricorn as well over this weekend leading up to the new moon. So the moon is going to be in Capricorn. So it's going to be a very heavy Capricorn next weekend, with Mars here, with Venus direct, with Mercury still retrograde, but still in conjunction with Pluto. Really a lot of focus by the next weekend on all of this very material, institutional stuff. And what is going to come forward at the end of the weekend, which is really important as well, speaking of Uranus, is that then we're going to find here, number one, the moon will meet Venus and will have that same trine to Uranus. So there will also be an emotional or intuitive connection to that, right? Venus is sensitive to the physical material world. The moon will come by and it'll become a much more emotional reverberation and sensitivity at that same time. Then it'll move past Venus. Then the sun is going to square Uranus, okay? The sun, which is in the home territory of Uranus, which is, again, this is going to be a huge challenge, right? This is going to be a huge, it's such irritation here, irritation to our ego. We're already having a hard time maintaining a sense of sovereignty and confidence and individuality with the sun in Aquarius, right? We're really drawn into letting the sun shine in on all of us, right? And having our identity be inseparable in some ways from the collective. This square, I mean, it's going to be in the shifting landscape of actual currency, of actual resources, of the material world around you. Anything that you find valuable or that you see as fertile ground in which to grow resources, especially this degree of Taurus. The square there's just so much agitation. And my best advice with this square is to actually, find a way to embody the actual degree, 11 degrees of Aquarius, which is finding that silent moment and that, the dissipation of all the other static and noise, which is very difficult with Uranus here, but allowing it to dissipate so that you can find the inspiration as we are moving forward. And it's just going to be so much noise, right? There's just going to be so much noise in general with this square that it'll be very tempting to want to it'll be very tempting to get very agitated with this square. This is a confrontation, but this is also a challenge, right? That's the other thing about squares. They may be a confrontation, but they're a challenge. And this challenge is, can we find ourselves and our own authenticity in, again, just being in some sort of communion, but just in connection to the social environment as its own organism, because this is where we find inspiration from. But we do have to shut down all the noise, which is very difficult to do when you're connecting to the entire collective. So I want to read actually 11 degrees. It says, during a silent hour. It's very difficult to have a silent hour with Uranus and Taurus involved, because we end up coming back to, this is survival. Taurus, soil, resources, assets, right? The physical world. This has a lot to do with our survival. And when it's always changing and shifting and there's no stability, it's very tough to find a silent hour where we're not thinking about this stuff or being in some ways activated by it. But during a silent hour, a person receives a new inspiration which may change his life. So the need to rely upon inner inspiration and guidance at the start of new developments, right? And so the tendency also here is to, again, just like completely just give up on what's happening right in front of us and in our actual everyday physical reality of our currency, our assets, food, right? The sustenance, all of these things are second house Taurus things. There's also a tendency here to just lose ourselves in the collective and do nothing, right? Just waiting for the sign. And that is also another part of this that will be a challenge. So it depends on what side of the, where you find yourself. If you are extra agitated and you do need to find like some measure of calm and silent, or if you are so overstimulated that you have shut down to the point where you don't even have a sense of self anymore and you're just waiting for the signal. And this is scary as fuck. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's true. So just keep that in mind too. This square could be, yeah. And we'll talk more about it. I mean, this is next week, so there'll be more energy related to these things as we get closer, and it'll be more clear to you. It'll be more clear to me as we get closer and we kind of go through the process of experiencing our lives leading up to this point. So that's pretty substantial too. And the moon will then, move through Capricorn and it will meet Mercury, it will meet Pluto, and then come into Aquarius on the 31st, I believe. Yep, comes into Aquarius, and it's on the 1st where we have our full moon. And like I said, this is the barometer. 13 degrees of Aquarius, the 12 to 13 degrees, my bad, is, and then here's Saturn right here. So not only is it like setting that intention to make sure our internalized instrumentation is calibrated and sensitive and we're paying attention to it, it's also going to be part of the structure that has us managing ourselves and being in alignment with whatever time is really managing a lot of this, right? Which is what Saturn ultimately represents. And so, and measuring pressure, you know what I mean? Time is inseparable from space, and both of those things are related to something like the shifting landscape or the weather, for instance. So again, these things will start to become a lot more clear as we move through the week and leading up to this point. And I'll be doing the forecast per sign with all of this stuff that I'm going to start recording and uploading those today. So I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Does anybody actually have any questions or anything that they would like clarification on before we end the stream? This might be a good time to be like, I was curious about this, or could you expand on this? Or you can also drop those kinds of questions in the Telegram chat, and that's something that I can expand on there or bring up in a different video. But yeah, that about covers it, I would say, for today in terms of the weekly astrology report. I'm looking to see if there's anything else. Those are the big ones. Uranus, while the moon is in Capricorn, is that at the very least, I feel like that moon in Capricorn, while that's happening, is going to ground us into some like grown-up feelings and some responsibility here. And again, that really does tie back into like, what are you doing with that square, right? Excuse me one second. The other thing about Mars coming into Capricorn too is, the conflicts that are building, right? And that is part of Capricorn, is the second degree, actually, of Capricorn, which is where Mars will be tomorrow, is the inevitable downside to a claim to power and leadership, which is there's always the tendency to dissipate and waste the communal energy on battling to keep your power. That's part of the Capricornian aspect too. So that's the other thing about Mars being there. Loves to be in Capricorn. So it's not surprising that you start to see like a real push towards conflict, like political conflict, social conflict, right? Military conflict, especially with Mars involved. So, and to have them, there's a lot of military connection to the sign of Scorpio when it comes to the soldiers themselves. And so it's really in Scorpio where you get the urge to serve as well. And so that may also factor into some things that are happening in this now moment in terms of the moon in Scorpio. So there's a lot happening, guys. So I do feel a little bit more awake. That's nice. Maybe I just needed some blood flow or something. But I'm going to leave it there for today. So my friends, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are interested in a reading, I do have a Starseed reading sale offering right now up until mid-February at this point. So you can find that information actually on Telegram. That's where the flyer is. If you go to Telegram, I have a flyer up for that sale, and maybe tomorrow I'll flash it onto the screen with the transmission just so you can see it and get like a visual on what's being offered. You can download it or save it so you can remember what the different offerings are and what it entails. But if you want to any type of service, any type of reading or energy work, you can go to my website. That's in the description box below. My email is also in the description box below. Telegram, the links to YouTube, BitChute are there as well, and the links to the music that I use. That's all royalty-free music, and those are the links to those artists and their pages as well. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Stay tuned for the new moon forecast for your rising moon and sun sign. And with that, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day. Take very good care of yourself. Accept the challenges in the feelings that you may have, and also realize that there's a lot of stability to be had when you start to, well down deeper into who you are, where you come from, because as all of the other surface level stuff continues to fall away in the preparation for the next the next level here, right? The next density as we're making this transition together, it's just important to take very good care of yourself. And that's what I'm planning on doing today. But have a great day, guys. I love you. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye.